Welcome to the first episode of Hoopla. For this first one, I'm just going to keep things very plain and simple. I will simply be going through each team in the Western Conference and giving my thoughts on each one and what their upcoming season is going to look like. And as I go along, I will be putting them in a tier list and ranking them that way. So the rankings will be as follows. At the bottom of the tier list, I will have the teams that I consider the bottom of the pack. Above them, I will have the teams that I call scary dangerous. And then above them, I will have teams that I consider legit contenders. And then obviously at the top, I will have the favorites. So let's get started. The first team I will be talking about is the Houston Rockets. There's not really much to talk about with them. I know I'm looking forward to watching them play with the new additions with Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks and the Thompson twin. And I think Jabari Smith and Jalen Green will take a big leap. And I also think Udoka will prove that he's a really good coach in this league. And I know they're a team that other teams are going to hate to play against because they're going to play hard, they're going to be scrappy, they're going to play hard defense, and they're going to use that youthful athleticism that they have. And Udoka's really going to hone in on that. And they're going to be hell to play against on a nightly basis. But at the end of the day, I think they're going to ultimately end up at the bottom of the conference. The next team is the Utah Jazz. Just like the Rockets, they're also going to be a team that not many people want to play against just because they're going to play so hard. They've got a lot of bodies, a lot of young bodies they can throw at people, but I also don't think they're going to win a whole lot of games. They have a lot of draft picks. Danny Ainge is working there, so he's trying to replicate what he did in Boston with those picks, and I don't think they have much to play for, so they're probably one of the teams that's going to end up tanking, which will ultimately lead them to being at the bottom of the pack as well. The next team is the San Antonio Spurs. There's really only one thing to talk about when it comes to the Spurs, and that's Wemby. Will he live up to the hype that he's been given? Ultimately, I don't think really no one knows. I think he will. It'll take him some time. In my opinion, he will have a really good season that's full of ups and downs, but ultimately he will show the league what his potential is and what he will be able to do in this league. But team-wise, there's not much really to talk about. They just do not have the roster or the talent to be a playoff team in this tough Western Conference. So I think they end up at the bottom of the pack as well. The next team is the Portland Trailblazers. I don't think they could have handled this offseason any better than what they did. They did not send Dame to Miami, which some could look at as kind of rude or unloyal to him, but they did send him to a very good situation that I think he will ultimately end up happy in Milwaukee. So they were able to make Dame happy, avoid getting a bad reputation, and probably got the best value they could have for him. They acquired Ayton, they flipped Holiday for Robert Williams and Brogdon, who they could flip again if they want to and acquire some more picks or some more young players. But ultimately, I think they put themselves in a great position to get a head start on the rebuild. Also, while I'm on the Blazers, I want to talk about DeAndre Ayton a second. This is a chance for him to start over and have a career resurgence, which I think he can. He is a 2010 guy in this league, and I think he's an all-star big man when he plays and when he's focused and when his mind is on basketball. So it'll be a chance for him to prove himself. Scoot Henderson, trading Dame helps him because he's basically getting handed the keys on day one. He will instantly have the team instead of having to play second fiddle to Dame, and he will be thrown to the fire, which is sometimes the best thing that can happen for a player his caliber because they get to develop a lot quicker and become the star players that I think he can be. As far as Anthony Simons goes, I think he's going to have an even larger role, and he's going to continue to get better and better. We saw glimpses last year of what he can be, but I think he continues to take steps in the right direction. Williams and Brogdon, if they keep them, I don't know if they will. I think they're going to be trade deadline players. But that's two players that could help this team kind of sneak around 500 and get up near or below 500, but get up near that 10 to 12 range that's fighting for a play-in spot. Or like I said, they could be flipped for some more young players. And then Jeremy Grant ultimately has to prove, is he worth the contract he signed? Because I don't think he's going to be tradable. That contract was a lot, and I don't know if he's worth that. So I don't know if that's somebody they could flip at the deadline because of how many years the contract had on it, and it was just signed. But I think they end up at the end of the pack as well, at the bottom of the pack as well. So the next tier we have is the teams that I labeled as scary dangerous. And the first team in there is the Memphis Grizzlies. This season is going to be a lot different for them, but something is telling me that this is the team that's going to be the most capable of winning a championship. I'm not saying they will, but I think that they have the most capability, and this will be their best overall team over the past few years, I think. They will not have a top 3 seed like they had last year, but this will be their best year in terms of capability of winning a championship. The loss of Dylan Brooks will ultimately help them in the long run, I think. They will miss his toughness and his edge that he brought to an extent, but I think having another offensive threat on the floor will really help their offense since shooting is such a big issue for them. And I think they have the ability to replace him on the defensive end, and they can find ways to bring the toughness and the edge through other means. But the loss that I think is really going to hurt them is Tyus Jones. He ran the team very well when the game's Ja was missing and led them to a record that was well over 500 without Ja. And he also was probably the best backup point guard in the league. So hopefully Derrick Rose can kind of fill this position. Hopefully they give him that role and let him be Derrick Rose, and I think they will be all right. But that's the loss that I'm a little worried about because he brought some stability and some confidence into that bench unit that I think they will kind of be missing. But Marcus Smart and Derrick Rose are the exact type of vets they needed to take another step in the right direction. Smart brings the toughness that Brook had. He also brings a little bit more IQ, and he has been around a lot of winning in Boston. I mean, they pretty much done everything but win the championship. And then for Derrick Rose, I think he would just help in the locker room and the overall, I don't want to say camaraderie, but the overall mindset of the team, because he has been through so much in his career. He can kind of speak on being humble, having some humility, and I think that would really help this team. So if they can manage to stay around 500 in the 25 games without Ja, I think they will be in really good shape heading into the playoffs, and the league better watch out because they're scary dangerous. The next team in this tier is the Minnesota Timberwolves. I think they're a team that has yet to find their identity, and I'm not sure they ever will with their current roster. Personally, I just don't think the Cat and Gobert pairing will ever work, at least to the getting them to where I think they want to be. Maybe they don't want to be there. They have a solid roster, but like I said, they're still a ways away from competing for championships. I think the only reason they're in this tier is because of Anthony Edwards. I think he will be he won't win most improved, but he will be one of the most improved players in this league, which is crazy to say considering he averaged 25 points a game last year, but I think he will move that up and bump that up to around 30. He will officially take over the team. He will become the alpha on the team. He already kind of was, but I think some still thought it was Cat's team, but I think this is the year that he kind of takes over the keys of that team and becomes the guy. And I think he's good enough to carry them into the playoff race, but I think that's about it. But I put them on the scary dangerous tier just because of how good I think Anthony Edwards is and is going to be. And then also just because Cat is really good. I'm not the biggest fan of Cat, but he's really good when he's playing and when he's hot. So I think they're a scary, dangerous team if they could get hot at the right time. The next team on here is the New Orleans Pelicans. I'm not going to spend much time on them. Like I said, their season comes down to if Zion is healthy or not. When Zion's healthy, last year when Zion was healthy, they were the 1 seed in the Western Conference, which it wasn't as tough as the Western Conference last year, but being the 1 seed still isn't no joke. So, like I said, it comes down to whether he's healthy or not. If Zion's healthy, they can beat anybody in this league. If not, they fall to slightly above average, if not average. So, that's all I'm going to say about them, but I think they are scary dangerous if Zion can stay healthy. The next team in this tier list is the Oklahoma City Thunder. They are probably the team that I'm most excited to watch this season. They're the surprise of the league last year. SGA established himself as a star, and I think an up-and-coming superstar. Chet's coming back, and all the other young talent on that team are going to continue to take steps forward. Speaking of SGA, I think he will be a dark horse in the MVP race this year. Especially, I think they're good enough to be a top 4 seed just because of how young and how talented they are. So if they're able to do that, I think he will for sure be a top 5 MVP candidate, if not higher. If not, should win it in my opinion. But like I said, he's an up-and-coming superstar, and I think he's somebody you can definitely build around and have some success in terms of championships. As far as Chet goes, in my opinion, I think he will have the best rookie season. I don't know if that will translate to winning Rookie of the Year just because Wemby and all the hype that's surrounding Wemby, but I think because he's on a better team, they will play in more meaningful games. They won't be on TV as much, probably not. They're going to put Wemby on TV a lot, but they will play more meaningful games, more close games that matter, so he will have more chances to make big plays and game winners, things of that nature that can all lead to your Rookie of the Year campaign. But I think he will show that he can be a really good NBA player at worst and can show that he has star potential. So on paper, I mean, they're the NBA's next great team and potentially dynasty, but we know that doesn't always happen. I'm a little worried that they could fall victim of having too much talent, and then they have a crazy number of picks over the next 5, 6, 7 years. So it could be a situation where players start to get unhappy with their roles and they're asking for more money and they just can't physically pay them as much as they want to. Then they're going to have more picks coming in, which is, I mean, you just never know how things turn out. But as far as this upcoming season, I think they have a really good shot at being a top 6 seed and they're full of youthful energy that can cause problems. And once they get in the playoffs, I mean, you just never know. So I think they're a scary, scary dark horse, scary contender, whatever word you want to use. They're scary, scary, dangerous, as I said. The last team I have on this list is the Dallas Mavericks. They're another team that had a quietly great offseason. Obviously, re-signing Kyrie was at the top of their list, and it would have been a disaster if they didn't let him go, considering, I mean, they didn't give up a crazy amount, but just considering all they went through to get him, it would have been a disaster if he was able to walk. So I think that was really good for them. But also signing Grant Williams, signing Seth Curry, drafting Derek Lively, and having Tim Hardaway Jr. come back will be, that's all very big deals for them. And I think, like I said, it led to them having a great offseason. As far as Kyrie, I mean, people kind of forget with all the hoopla that was going on. The title. With all the hoopla that was going on around his trade and his contract in Brooklyn, and then whatever that fiasco was at the end of the season where they rested him and Luka, it kind of gets lost that he was playing some of the best basketball of his career last year. And I think he will pick up right where he left off last season. I think he has a great season this year. I think he wants to make it work, which is kind of the biggest factor. This is probably his last big stop. I mean, he could request another trade. It is Kyrie I'm talking about, but I think this is his last big stop, and I think he really wants to win a championship in Dallas. And I probably shouldn't keep believing in him, but I do. He's one of my favorite players in the league, so I'm always going to believe in Kyrie. Grant Williams. Let's talk about Grant Williams for a second. He's the exact type of player they need. 3-and-D guy, versatile defender, brings physicality, toughness, a little edge that I think they need, because sometimes they get, I don't want to say they get punked, but they get abused on the inside and just on the perimeter, on the defensive end especially. So I think he will help that. For Seth Curry, he's been one of the best three-point shooters in this league for his whole career, and he knows how to play with Luka, knows how to play with Kyrie. He has had experience playing with both of them, and with them two on the same team, he's probably going to get more open looks than he's ever had. So not that it can go up really any, but his percentages will probably slightly go up. So he'll probably be one of the best three-point shooters in the league next year again. Drafting Derek Lively, like I said, was huge. Athletic big man. They may have went up a little too high for him, but sometimes you want what you want. I think he brings some rim protection. Will be a great lob threat in the pick and roll with both Luka and Kyrie. And Lord knows you don't have to do much when you're running a pick and roll with them two. So, but I think he has lots of potential beyond that. I think he can be a pretty good big man in this league, and I'm interested to see how he develops. And then lastly, Tim Hardaway coming back. He has been Luka's second-hand man for years. He's an excellent shooter, brings some size and athleticism to their guard and wings position. But I'm looking forward to seeing him come back as well. I don't know exactly what to expect from this team, but one thing I do know is that they have way too much talent, led by Luka and Kyrie, not to be a good team in this league. Also know that with two players of that caliber, I don't know if anybody wants to see them in a 7-game series. I'm not saying Luka is LeBron, or that this team is as good as those Cavs teams, but you get them two in a 7-game series, as KG once said, anything is possible. So I think they're also a scary, dangerous team in this league. Moving on to the next tier, which was my tier that I call legit contenders. And I think there's four legit contenders in the Western Conference. The first one is the Los Angeles Clippers. I'm not going to spend much time discussing the Clippers because they're a lot like the Pelicans. Their season comes down to health. When they're healthy, they can beat anybody in the league and might have the best top-to-bottom roster in the league when they're healthy. But like I said, I mean, it comes down to that. Without one or the other, they're an average team that's dangerous at best. But when they're both playing, they're one of the best teams in the league, and I could see them winning a championship. I also think having Russ for a full year will help this team. Ty Lue will be able to, find ways to get the most out of him. But that's really all there is to say about the Clippers. I mean, Paul George has been one of my favorite players in the league since back when he was in Indiana battling the Heat. So I really want to see this team succeed, but I just don't feel like there's much to break down. Like I said, it all comes down to whether their two starters are on the floor or not. The next team, and I'll admit I'm a bit biased towards them because they're my favorite team, is the Golden State Warriors. I think they are legit contenders this year. And the Warriors will be a scary team for the rest of the league because of 5 things other than Steph Curry and Draymond Green. 1 is the acquisition of CP3. 2 is Klay will have one of the best years he's had since his injury, and it'll probably be one of the best years of his career. 3, the signing of vets Dario Saric and Rui Gay will really help them. 4, having GP2 for a whole season will also really help them. And 5, Andrew Wiggins. Those 5 things will be the reason the Golden State Warriors are back being legit contenders in this league, and I could see them winning another championship. So starting with CP3. I think it's simply he provides reliability in the non-Steph minutes. He gives versatility and more options of how they can play. This was their biggest issue against the Lakers. Last year they ran out of cards to play. I also think he will be able to get, I know this is said a lot, but I truly think he will be able to get more out of the young guys, especially Kuminga and Moody, when he's running that second unit. And I also think even if he starts, and there's people are acting like he's only going to play in the bench or only going to play in the starting lineup, but there's going to be a lot of mix and matching going on, and I just think any lineup he is in will benefit. That's everywhere Chris Paul goes, the team gets better, and I don't see why this situation would be any different. The second thing was that I think Klay will have one of the best years of his career. I think he took the offseason last year a little for granted, and, I can't blame him. You're coming off of 2 major injuries, and you win a championship. You come back halfway through the season, and you win a championship. I could see why you kind of I'm not going to say he took the offseason off, but you don't take it as serious as you need to be. So I think he's going to come into the season in mid-season form already. And honestly, another year removed from his injuries will really help him because they say it kind of takes multiple years to get back from each of those injuries. So he had 2 of them. So I think it's going to take multiple years. And if you remember, the second half of his season last year was great. He led the league in three-pointers made and still ended up shooting around 40% from 3, considering how badly he started. So, and I also think because of how badly it ended in that Lakers series, he's a super competitive person. I think he will be playing with something to prove. It's a contract year coming up. If they don't get him an extension, he's heading into free agency, so he's got to have a great year so he can get a good contract. And he will also be another person that benefits from CP3. All shooters benefit from CP3. That's just the way it is. I also think the third thing was signing Dario Saric and Rudy Gay. As far as Saric goes, he's a big man who adds versatility. He's a shoot, dribble, pass big man, and the team always succeeds when they have that Euro style of big man. And he also has some experience running motion offenses. He played with Chris Paul in OKC, played with him in Phoenix. So, I just think he's knows how to play the game of basketball and will fit into the system perfectly. And from what little bit I saw in the preseason, he really looks like I'm right on that. Rudy Gay, he's not the shooter Otto Porter was, but I think he can fill that type of a role. Big, strong, not as athletic as they once were, but still savvy because of how long they've been in the league. And it just adds to their depth. Just another reliable, intelligent basketball player that I think they'll be able to use in spots throughout the season. But don't be surprised if come playoff time he's playing a lot of minutes, just like Otto Porter did that year. The fourth thing was having GP2 for a whole season. He is very, very, very important to this team. More important than I think a lot of people realize. Obviously, he brings their defense back to that championship level that you need it to be at and that they've had it at in the past. He's a great defender, probably one of the best on-ball defenders in the league. But his presence on the offensive side of the ball really gets overlooked. He's a great cutter and a great offensive rebounder, and they slack off of him a lot, but he really shoots a great percentage from those corner threes. And overall, he just helps the offense run. He's one of the glue guys, one of those, the utility top players that you can just throw in any lineup, and he's going to make that lineup better. So having him a whole season will really help. And the last thing is Andrew Wiggins. People forget he had established himself as the second-best player on this team in their finals run. In the start of last season, he was having the best year of his career. He was looking to be an all-star again, playing at an all-star level until the whole situation happened where he had to miss a lot of time. But the kid is only 28 years old. He is really just now entering his prime, and that's kind of scary to think about, but I also think he will have a great year and probably once again will be the second-best player on this team, not named Steph Curry. For the Warriors, I have been back and forth on this team all summer since before the Poole trade, and I definitely have been back and forth after. But however, as the season approaches, as I've seen a little bit of preseason, something in my gut tells me that they will be really, really good and establish themselves as true contenders in the West. On paper, they have fixed most of their problems from last year, chemistry and versatility, and they added some different types of players that will give them more variation on how they can play the game. They have fastballs, curveballs, sliders, changeups this year, whereas last year all they had was their fastball. The chemistry was off all year long last year, whether it was due to the punch or the fact that they could not win a road game. Something was off, who knows. But based on the press conferences, the way everybody's talking, players, coaches, the new GM, it just feels like something special is kind of brewing in Golden State, and I'm really looking forward to watching it. And I hope I'm right because this is just a personal opinion, but I think the league is better when the Warriors are competing for championships. The next team I have in my legit contenders is the LA Lakers. As the offseason went along, I mean, I thought the Lakers were being extremely overrated in terms of the moves they were making. But honestly, I think I've completely flipped around. I think the Lakers are going to be really good this season. I don't know what I was thinking, saying otherwise. I mean, I really don't. I think I was just trying to be against the grain. Everybody's saying the Lakers have had the best offseason, but I mean, I really am wrong on that. And it's probably, honestly, it was me probably still being mad about them beating the Warriors, but after my emotions settled down, I realized that the Lakers are going to be really good. The main thing I didn't know was really how to gauge Austin Reeves. I mean, people were acting like he's the next greatest thing, and I saw spurts of it, and I saw how good. I mean, I saw that he can be good, but I thought he had kind of maxed out. But after seeing some of what he did in the World Cup, I'm starting to see it. He is legit. He's a legit player, very talented, pretty good at all facets of the game. He's not great at anything besides, I would say, just his playmaking and kind of knowing his IQ and intelligence of how to play the game. His handles are great, but other than that, he's pretty good in all facets, which makes him a pretty good player. And I think he can get better in every facet, which is scary. I know LeBron will be LeBron until the day he hangs it up. He will average 25, 8, and 8 in his sleep on efficient shooting splits. So the question, honestly, is will AD put together a consistently great season? That's been the question for the past since he got to LA. When he puts together great seasons, the team has great seasons. So it'll really come to that. I mean, he's talented enough to be in the MVP conversation as well as the Defensive Player of the Year conversation. And I think he will play. Or the question is, will he play the same since he got the extension this summer? Or will he play harder? I mean, you just never know. Some of that stuff's just finicky. But we'll see. Darvin Ham, I think, will be a better coach than he was last year. It always helps to have some more experience. I also think the team is more bought into what he's saying because of the success they had in the latter part of that season. D'Lo will have a good season. It will not be anything like the Nuggets series was. Of course, he will be streaky just like he always is, but I think he will have a fairly consistent. He will play a lot harder on the defensive end because that was what was taking him off the floor. He was literally had to come off the floor because he wasn't guarding. They also made a lot of good signings that fit on paper that you kind of never know until you see them play. I mean, Cam Reddish, I think, will be the biggest surprise of the signings. I've always been a fan of Cam since he was at Duke. I just think he hasn't been put in the right situation, but playing with LeBron seems to help everybody that plays with him, so he's in a great situation in my opinion. And then Christian Wood, he's obviously got the talent. I think when AD don't play, he can carry some of the load, but it'll be interesting to see how he fits in and whether I don't know personally, obviously, but they say he's got kind of an attitude problem and it's whatever, stuff like that can kind of cause him to get in his own way, but we'll see how he looks. But, I mean, Rob Pelinka did his thing this offseason. Put together a really, really good roster to surround LeBron and AD. On paper, they have everything they need. But like I said, their season will come down to whether AD can play a lot of games, the majority of the games, or whether he can be consistent in those games that he plays, and then whether LeBron is healthy. That's literally all their season comes down to. And then how well Austin Reeves continues to develop. So that's why they're legit contenders for me. The next team that I have as legit contenders are the Sacramento Kings. I mean, they were one of the best stories in the league last year since they seemingly came out of I don't even know if it's seemingly. They did come out of nowhere. With that being said, they were one of the few teams in the league that I don't really have a strong opinion on either way. I don't know if they will be really good or if last year was a fluke. I'm still kind of trying to figure out what I think of them. It's probably somewhere in between, if we're being honest, but I don't think it's fully one or the other, but I'm still trying to figure out where I stand on them. So here's a few reasons why I think they can be good. I mean, last year, obviously, they had the highest offensive rating in history since that stat has been being kept track of. They had the highest. They held their own against the Warriors in their first playoff experience with a team that has a lot of playoff experience, obviously have won 4 championships. But then again, I could also say the Warriors against the Lakers, it clearly showed that they weren't the same team they were the year before. I mean, so it could be a knock and it could be a win for the Kings at the same time. It's just that's one of those weird situations. I think they have a lot of room to grow on the defensive end, and they have the athleticism and the young guys and the people to be able to do that. So And Mike Brown is a defensive coach, or that's what they consider him. That's what he was in Golden State. So I think he will focus on that more this offseason and has focused on it this summer. And I think they will be better on that end. But, I mean, here's a reason they may not be as good as they were last year. I mean, they were relatively healthy all year. I have here that their starting lineup played 63 games together, which was probably top 5 in the league, I would say. And they were surprised to the league. Usually it takes some time for teams to kind of adjust that, okay, that team's good. So when their teams are going into Sacramento last year, they probably was like, well, I mean, it's Sacramento. They've been bad for years in a row, so you don't take them as serious. But I think they'll start to get that a little more this year in terms of teams taking them more seriously. They also had a few free agent signings and acquisitions that I think will really help them, starting with JaVale McGee. Add some size, some length, some rim protection, an area which they were horrible at last year. I mean, that was probably clear as you watch Steph Curry slice through them and shoot layups the whole series. Adds a lob threat in the pick and roll with all their guards, whether it's Fox, whether it's Herter, Davion Mitchell, Monk, Duarte now. And he brings some veteran leadership, and he's a great locker room guy. Even though he kind of has a weird reputation, he's a great player. Then I'm not sure I'm pronouncing his name right, but they signed Sasha Vesenkov. No idea how to pronounce his name. I'm sure I'll learn it. Hope I learn it, because that would mean that he was a great signing. I don't know much about him, like I said, but I know it's not easy to be a EuroLeague MVP, and he was one. So I think he could add another element of versatility to their already lethal offense. Not that they needed it. It was already a potent offense, but I think he could add something to it. And then lastly, Chris Duarte. I liked him coming into the league. I remember I wanted the Warriors to draft him, but I think he simply just adds more depth to the team. Nothing crazy special, but just another weapon. I mean, that's something you can never have too many weapons. So, and I think he's pretty good defensively, so he'll help them as well. And then Keegan Murray's development, I think, is what will determine how quickly they become a real threat to win a championship. If he develops into an all-star caliber player in the next few years, somebody better watch out, because the Kings are they're already coming, but I mean, if he develops into that type of player, the league is in trouble. So, I mean, in my opinion, the Kings are a good team. I don't think they're a top 3 team in the West like they were last year, but they will be very good again. Mike Brown will be in the defensive mind. He will focus on defense, have them playing better on the defensive end. And at the end of the day, I mean, they're a young, great team with a great, bright future. But I think they have a few more years before they can win a championship. But I think they are a legit contender. I would not be shocked at all if they found a way to win the championship this year. So they belong in my legit contenders category. All right. Now we're on to our favorites tier. Teams that I think should be the favorites. There's only 2 teams left. I'm sure y'all know who they are, but I'm gonna give my analysis and talk about them. So the first team is the Phoenix Suns. But real quick, before I get into them, I want to make a quick analogy real fast. So we all have had that ex or that person that we felt like we let slip away for one reason or another. Maybe it was we got in our own way. Maybe it was we had a fight. Whatever it may have been that caused it. There's that one ex that we can't seem to not think about, and that we feel like we messed up with. I'm not trying to get all emotional here, but everybody's got that person. For KD, I think that team is the Golden State Warriors. The Golden State Warriors are his ex that I don't think he will ever truly get over. He decided to leave for whatever reason. Obviously, this is from an outside perspective looking in. I felt like that was a perfect fit culture-wise, play style-wise, personality-wise with the other stars. I felt like that was the perfect fit for him. Coaching, I felt like that was the perfect coach for him. It was perfect. Everything was perfect, but for whatever reason, he decided to go look to see if the grass was greener. And in Brooklyn, we thought he may have found it with James Harden and Kyrie got there, but unfortunately it didn't work out. And a lot of the times we were not able to find something better than that person and that ex. That's what I'm talking about. But if there was ever a situation that I think he could find better, and I'm not saying it's better, but that he could be content with, is where he's at now. I think the big 3 that they formed and the depth they put around them has a chance to be a perfect situation for him, and will cause him to move. Not that he hasn't moved on. He seems like the type of guy that can move on pretty easy, but I think this will finally make him be able to move on from the Warriors. And if it don't work out, unfortunately, the Warriors will be that ex that he can never stop thinking about and will always wonder, what if? So, I hope I'm wrong. Like I said, I hope I'm wrong, but we'll see. So as far as the team goes, with everything that happened across the league this summer, somehow, someway, it feels like the Suns have kind of been flying under the radar and been kind of going through everything quietly, despite probably making the biggest trade besides the Dame trade and trading for Bradley Beal. But they've also kind of sneakily filled out their bench to the point where they have a really good, solid, well-rounded roster. And they also hired a championship coach in Frank Vogel. People may not like him or whatever, but at the end of the day, he's a championship coach. So I see no reason why the Suns shouldn't be a favorite in the West, unless the crown just automatically stays on the Nuggets' head until it's taken off. But I think they should be in this favorites tier. So let's discuss the team a little bit. Bradley Beal, obviously, say what you want about him. At the end of the day, he's a 30-point-a-game scorer. Not many people in the league, not many people in NBA history have been able to say that. So that just tells you the caliber of player he is. And I think he is in a situation in his career where he's starting to get up there in age and he wants to win a championship. And the want to is always the biggest thing when you're trying to form a super team, is the want to and the willingness to sacrifice. As far as the big three as a whole goes, people always make a big deal out of whether or not big threes can figure out a way to play together. I don't think that's going to be a problem in this case, mainly because of Kevin Durant. I mean, he's probably the easiest superstar to play with just because of the simple fact of his efficiency. I mean, he can shoot 15 times and still end up with 25, 30 points on a nightly basis. So that just makes it a lot easier when the coach is trying to figure out how to spread out shots and the players are worrying about, I've already shot 18 times and we're in the third quarter. I think it just kind of helps that, and he's just an easygoing person to play with. And I also think they will figure it out because I think the three of them are truly bought in. And like I said, that's the biggest thing. KD has been in that stage of his career where it's championship or bust. Bill is entering that point where he just wants to win, and I think Book is starting to get to the point where he's starting to think about his legacy and knows that he better start winning championships now, because you don't want to keep waiting, because championships are never promised. And let's talk about Shaq's, as Shaq likes to say, the others. Eric Gordon was the main big signing. Great three-point shooter, obviously. Been around a long time. Vet guy, knows how to play with superstars. Did it in Houston, has done it with the Clippers. He's played in a lot of big games in his career. Even though it seems like he has a tendency to disappear, he's played in a lot of big games, which always helps. Bol, I think he will have a breakout year this year and show off more of his skill set. Provide some rim protection on defense while also being able to space the floor some on offense. I don't think he's a great three-point shooter, but it's not that spacing will be that much of an issue with this team anyway. But I think he can go 5 out with him. Yuta Watanabe, that came in the KD trade with him, another great three-point shooter. Shot 44% last year. He didn't play much in Brooklyn, but he had his moments. Brings some size, length, athleticism, and effort, which is every team can use that. Then you got the ramifications of the Dame trade. You brought in Grayson Allen, another great three-point shooter. Also adds some length on the wing, adds toughness, as some will call it. Others may call it dirtiness, but whatever. The kid can play basketball. I'm calling him kid, but he can play basketball. And he can do more than just shoot the ball. He's a great offensive player. Brought in Nurkic. He's not necessarily better than Ayton. I definitely don't think he's better than Ayton, but I think he will be better at the role that they were going to ask their big man to play. He's a good physical screener and a pick-and-roll partner. And he also brings some toughness and rebounding and just kind of some veteran savvy that I think can help them on offense and defense. Then you've got Damian Lee, another one that, like DJ Khaled said, another one of three-point shooting. He's been around a lot of winning as well with the Warriors. Suns have been winning since he got there. I mean, they haven't won a championship, but they've won a lot of games. Then you've got Josh Okogie and Nazir Little. And both of them just bring more defensive wing depth that they can always use. So for this team, I mean, I don't think chemistry will be a detriment to this team. Yeah, they'll have to figure some stuff out, but they're too great of players not to. They have tons of shooting and different lineups they can throw on the floor. It's a loaded team at the top with three great players in KD, Book, and Bill. But their roster is full of players that I think will star in their role, and that's always key in forming a championship team, as we saw last year with Denver. So the Suns, in a oddly quiet fashion, somehow shot themselves to the top of the conference and are my personal favorites to come out of the West, but they definitely belong in the favorites category. All right. The last team left is, I'm sure all you know, is the champions of last year, the reigning champions, the Denver Nuggets. I mean, when I think, obviously they belong in my favorites category. When I think about the Nuggets, and there's two big questions that keep coming to my head. The first one is, are the losses of Bruce Brown and Jeff Green a bigger deal than people, the media, are letting on? And then also will be, can they avoid the championship hangover? The answer to the first one remains to be seen, but I think it's a very, very big loss, especially Bruce Brown. But, I mean, we'll see. We'll see. They have some players that are they're trying to develop to take on that type of role. As far as the championship hangover, I don't think they fall victim in the normal sense. They will still be a great team. But there's something to be said about being the hunters versus being the hunted, and it's just human nature. And that is what makes the great ones great. Jokic and Murray will be fine because they belong in that great category, but it's all the surrounding role players that could get a little complacent and not sell out for that one rebound, that one steal, that one tip pass, that one cut, one screen, or that one defensive rotation, whatever it may be. It's just that slight little, I don't even know what word to describe, but it's that slight little extra that can lead to a championship as it did last year. It's whether or not that stays there throughout 82 games. Obviously, it'll come back into playoffs, but throughout the 82 games will be where that shows up. So let's dive deeper into the Bruce Brown and Jeff Green loss. They have Christian Braun and Peyton Watson, who they think will develop into those type of players, but I don't know, and I think they can. I really like Christian Braun. I've liked him since he was at Kansas, and a little bit I've seen of Peyton Watson. I do like him too, but I don't know if Bruce Brown and Jeff Green's presence will be missed until it comes to playoffs, just because of their experience and the reliability of them two, whereas you kind of don't know what you're going to get from those rookies. Braun had some good games, then he had some awful games where he could barely play. So, I mean, we'll just kind of see. And then Reggie Jackson was the one guy on their team that's like, every time I seen that he was on the roster, I was like, why is he not on the floor? I mean, he's too great of a player, but I don't know what happened, but I think he will find a role this year. I mean, he's too talented not to be on the team. Not to be playing. He can be very useful to them. And it'd be interesting to see what they do with him. Honestly, I don't know I don't know why they have him if they're not going to use him. But like I said, I think he finds a role this year. And one thing we know about this team is that Jokic will be Jokic, Murray will do Murray things, MPJ will be MPJ, Gordon will always be solid. However, I think their hopes of repeats will depend on the development of those young players, and then how well their role players continue to star in their roles. And also, I think it's, like I said, is Reggie Jackson, because if he can find a role, I think he really helps them out. But I do believe they should be favorites just because they are defending champs, and to be the man, you have to beat the man, as they always say. They won the chip, did all their talkings as they should have, all their talking and their trash talking and their bragging, boasting, whatever, as they should. I enjoyed it, but as they often say, heavy is the head that wears the crown. They are now the hunted, and that can sometimes shift when it comes to winning another championship. So we'll see. All right, I guess that does it for my Western Conference breakdown and my tier list, power rankings, whatever you want to call it. I think I discussed every team and talked about everything I wanted to talk about. So, yeah, I'm done with that. Shortly after this one comes out, I will have another episode coming out doing the same thing for the Eastern Conference, going through each team, discussing what I think their season is going to look like, and then I would be putting them into a tier list as well, probably the same tiers, although the East is a whole lot different from the West, so the tiers may look a little different, but I hope you enjoyed this episode. Sorry, I apologize for any stuttering or phrases I repeat, and I know one of them's like I said. I repeat like I said a lot, or like, period, so I hope that wasn't too bad to listen to, and I guess we'll see you next time.